Good morning. I just got done watching the UFC and I noticed something out of the ordinary these days that I thought I would share with you. Now, I don't watch the UFC very much anymore and I don't really pay attention to it too much, even though I used to be a big fan. And I'll get into that a little bit later in this video. But I'll still occasionally watch if there's an interesting matchup or a big championship fight. I'll at least tune in to the main event or the co-main event. So that's why I did this morning. There was a big championship fight this morning, and when the fighters come out to touch gloves and the ref gives his final instructions, at the end of the ref's final instructions, the ref said to the two guys that were about to fight for the world title, "God bless you." And I didn't even really notice this at first, but my wife says to me, "Did he just say God bless you?" And I'm like, by golly, he did say that. And now maybe 30, 40 years ago, that wouldn't have been anything to think anything of. But I'm like, geez, that's really strange. That's really out of the ordinary, because these days there's so many people I can see getting offended or getting upset by it. Even going back a little over 20 years ago, Seinfeld actually had an episode where this was the plot of the episode. Someone sneezes, and I believe it was George says, "God bless you." You know, just as a figure of speech, he says, "God bless you." It's kind of a tradition. And then the person gets offended by it, and in the episode there's this big controversy. So it's very surprising to see a ref say that. Every ref, they kind of have a trademark before that they do something right before the fight begins. I think John McCarthy, he says, "Let's get it on." And then they have that one ref, Mario Yamasaki, I believe his name is. He does like a little heart symbol with his hands. That's kind of his trademark. But this ref chose to say "God bless you." And what makes it even even less expected is he was speaking with an accent. I believe he's British. So if you know anything about England, most people there are atheists. I was talking to a English guy once, and I said, "Now I understand most people aren't religious in England." And he said, "Yeah, in England we like to joke and say that we sent all the religious people off to America." And now maybe that's true to some extent, because growing up, and I grew up in the Midwest, I grew up in North Dakota, people growing up were extremely religious. Not to a weird way. They weren't weird about it, but people would go to church on the weekend, and people had at least a general belief in God, and they had morality. They had the structure that religion gives you. So that was part of my upbringing. Now, keep in mind, that was also around the same time this Seinfeld episode happened. This is going back in the 20th century, back in the 90s. And I bring that up because I think even when I go back there now to North Dakota, it's changed so much. The demographics have changed. There's all these other types of religions and churches, especially all these Protestant churches there that didn't exist before, and even of other religions, because there's other types of people living there. So I was thinking, this referee, well, obviously he's probably a Christian, or if he's not a Christian, he at least believes that there's some sort of God, or a just God he believes in. But I was also thinking, even if you're not, if you really want to bring attention to yourself, that would be a good way to do it. Just say something about God, because people will lose their minds these days. A lot of the freaks anyways will lose their minds and make a big fuss and stink about things and give you lots of attention. So I was thinking, even if you're an atheist, it'd be kind of a funny way to get attention if that's what you're looking for. But I see a lot of people complaining on the internet even about, because a lot of the fighters, obviously they're Christians, and many of them thank God after their fight. And I see a lot of people, a lot of fans complaining online about this. But I think to myself, those are people that probably they're not fighters themselves, and they don't compete, especially in combat sports. Because if you're doing something scary, like competing in combat sports, I come from a wrestling background, even if you're not religious during the week and you're a very sinful person, when you're about to do something scary, where like going out in wrestling, there's gonna be a bunch of people in the stands, and they're gonna see you lose. If you lose, it can be very embarrassing, or you can get hurt very bad. And especially if you're doing something like these UFC fighters, their whole career and their futures are on the line every time they step in there, and their health is on the line. How much brain damage are they going to take? Because if you do something like MMA, it's not a matter of if you're going to take brain damage, it's a matter of how much are you going to take. So there's an old saying, there's no atheists in foxholes, and if you've done something scary like MMA or you've competed in combat sports, you kind of understand what that means. So I just want to share this with you today because I thought it was kind of interesting. And even if you are an atheist, now me personally, I like it. Of course, I tend to be a believer. Part of that comes with having a family. That's how a lot of people get when they have families. But even if you're not, I think it's still nice that someone wishes you well. Even if you don't believe in what they believe in, they're ultimately hoping and wishing for things and praying for things that are good for you. Even if someone comes up to me and they say something just, some sort of well wishes, or something like if a Muslim were to say, hey, I'm praying for you, or if a Muslim were to say, God bless you, or someone of some other kind of religion, or even if it was just an atheist wishing me well, I'd just be happy and thankful for it. So I just want to share this with you because I thought it was a very unusual and potentially controversial subject in today's setting, but I thought it was very nice. So, my friends, God bless you, and go outside. Don't just spend all your time on the internet, and have a good time with friends and family, and get outside.